Mickey Carroll is director of the Quinnipiac Polling Institute. He joins us in the studio tonight. How are you?
Liz, it's good to be with you
Long
again,
time
as
no
always.
see. Yeah.
Well, you know, we'll get together every now and then.
And
the Benjamin family.
Increasingly, right? Because there's going to be a lot of polls coming out.
We'll do a lot. We try to do almost, you know, because we do 6 states plus the nation. So, you know, New York has to get in line, but about every 6, 7 weeks.
This is an interesting poll, actually. Voters say 64 to 21 that they're not hearing enough from Andrew Cuomo on the budget. Now, interesting because he's put out this sort of 200-plus page book about everything, the new New York agenda that he's going to do. He does take questions on the budget when he is cruising around the state as Attorney General. Apparently, that's not getting through to the electorate.
You know, that's your fault. I mean,
it's my fault.
Well, no, not your personal fault, but the news media. Apparently, they haven't put out enough of stuff from Andrew Cuomo. But look at the why of it. We asked, you know, is this because he's deferring politely, minding his manners, letting the current governor do whatever he does, or is he ducking?
And the numbers ducking.
Right down the middle.
Indeed.
38, 41.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one is 41 and which one is 38, but they're the same numbers.
It's 38 overall say he's politely deferring to Governor Patterson. 41% say he's ducking.
Okay.
Independents are split, and Democrats, 43-34, go with polite. I guess they're giving him the benefit of the doubt in his own party.
You know, you'll find that in polls, Liz, that Democrats tend to be nicer to Democrats. Republicans tend to be nicer to Republicans. You know, the standards. Men tend to go for Republicans, men for women for Democrats, blah, 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 blah. Those are standards.
The thing here, though, is, isn't it really, as infuriating as I might find it, that he's not going, as a journalist, that he's not going into a lot of detail. Even his exhaustive book doesn't say the how of he's going to do something. He says, we should do X in a pronouncement, freeze pay for state employees. Well, that's actually a very difficult thing. You have to go through contract negotiation, the contracts with the public employees up in the spring. You could go to arbitration. It's not just that you wave a wand and salaries are frozen. It's better for him to say as little as possible because then he doesn't get held to it if he's elected.
You're right. That's politically speaking, probably it's safer for him not to speak out. And let's face it, Andrew Cuomo was a very smart guy. And if he does something, you can bet that he's figured out the political implications thereof. Nonetheless, there is an argument, and it's a pretty good one. You sort of take a step back just a little bit from this Andrew Cuomo, blah, 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 and look at the history of president or governor-elects. Harold Holzer wrote a very good book on Abraham Lincoln as president-elect. And states were seceding. Every time you turned around, somebody went. But he stepped away from saying specific things while he wasn't the president. And you can argue, look, Patterson's the governor. He's got the responsibility. It might be bad manners to be too specific. I don't know.
But Andrew Cuomo hasn't also been elected yet. It just looks like he's probably going to be. I mean, nevertheless, even though people say, we'd like to hear a little bit more from him, and maybe it's just because people are a little bit contrary that way, right?
Well, maybe they really do want to hear more from him.
Yeah, but when you offer them an option, would you like to hear more or would you like to hear less? Who's going to say, you know what, I don't want to hear so much?
That's a good point. But listen, Andrew Cuomo is in a slightly different position than a lot of politicians would be at this stage of the election process. That's the point. Against Palladino or Lazio, neither of them even show up.
Yeah, 58-26 Lazio, 59-23 Palladino. Almost no bounce from the convention for either of those guys.
None. I mean, that's even less than, I've always figured the generic Republican vote's about 30, 35. This is less, about 25. So that Andrew Cuomo, in that sense, is in a different position than most candidates would be at this stage of the game, which is why we asked this question, because people are saying, hey, wait a minute, where does Andrew stand on this one? What's he going to do? And if there was a really tough election coming up, you'd want to speak to all the candidates, blah, 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 blah. But here, the guy is, by most political assumptions, going to be the next governor.
Interesting also, you asked this question about his father. You asked whether Andrew Cuomo, if he gets the job that his father, Mario Cuomo, once held, would he do better or worse than Dad? 51% said about the same. They seem interchangeable.
Well, you could, again, I hate to be a contrarian, but I think pollsters don't get polled, right? But if we did, I think I'd say probably better.
Really?
I'll tell you why. Because he saw his father up close. Mario Cuomo whether you like them or not, did a certain number of things as governor. Andrew Cuomo was very close to that. And so, inevitably, Mario Cuomo did some things well, some things badly, but Andrew was close enough to see it. So I think at least some of the obvious mistakes that any governor will make, he will be insulated
but
against.
also a totally different time. I mean, you just have a different, I don't even know necessarily that it's a fair comparison, because Mario Cuomo governing New York at a totally different time, I mean, what Andrew Cuomo is walking into is not necessarily, not even close actually, to the same state that Mario Cuomo had to walk into
Why
at
not?
that time.
You know, the governor. You know, you're governor. You have the same
The budget
responsibility.
deficit is massive.
Okay,
Massive,
well, the
Mickey.
budget deficits are always massive. Look, Liz, you know, look, when I was a reporter, right?
Back in the good old days.
In the good old, well, maybe good, maybe bad, whatever it is. But when I was a reporter, I always used to, the budgets, they always used to say, 2 years out is disaster. 1 year out is difficult, but we can solve it. And that, you know, has that changed?
Not
I mean,
really.
granted, there's huge deficits. And Liz, you're right that the economy, not the New York economy, the national economy, has gotten governments in trouble.
Sure.
Quinnipiac, as you know, covers half a dozen states. I was in New Jersey just last week, and they're having exactly the same kind of, but actually they're having worse problems in New Jersey as the, what do you call it, the percentage of the state budget that is going to be in deficit. Well, I read just today on in the Times Union, I saw there was a story, New Jersey, maybe it was in the, whatever it was, that the Times had made, that the New York, let's try it again, New Jersey had made a budget deal, the governor and the Democrats who dominate. So, which are, but the cuts are exactly the same kind of thing you're talking about here, drastic.
Well, which is part of the reason why Andrew Cuomo doesn't want to weigh in on them, because they're not occurring on his watch. So why does he want to wade into difficult things?
He's going to have to do it, that's why.
He is, but it might, we don't know what the situation will be by that point. Let's just talk briefly, though, about the U.S. Senate race, because you also polled there. Kirsten Gillibrand, 44-27 approval rating. She's still not over that 50. She briefly got over 50. She's back down now. And yet she's leading her largely unknown Republican challenger. She didn't include Joe DiAguardi in here, who's trying to primary his way on.
It's funny. It's fairly easy to forget the Republican candidates because they are, nobody knows them. You look at the, you know, favorable, unfavorable. Let me look at the actual numbers.
It's 42, I'll tell you. It's
well,
46-26, she's leading Bruce Blakeman, 47-25 Malpass, but it's 87% don't know Blakeman, who ran statewide for comptroller.
Yes, exactly.
And David Malpass, who is a new
90% of people don't know enough about him. So those are the numbers that don't know. I mean, talk about anonymity. I mean, you know, would you know these guys if they walked down the street? Well, as a matter of fact, you would.
Know them,
I would too, but most people wouldn't.
Bruce Blakeman was on the show yesterday.
Oh, was he?
Do you see any possibility here, because a lot is being talked about sort of the upset electorate, right? People are very anti-incumbent. Any way that you see between now and September, or now and November, depending on the situation, that there could be an upset?
Liz,
in either of these races?
Well, don't forget, when I was a reporter, I dealt with stuff like that. In the pollster business, we deal with numbers, and the numbers are pretty dramatic, pretty decisive. But you can never say never. You know, who knows? Something might happen. You know, little green men might land from a spaceship on that lawn behind the Capitol, and it'll change the situation. No, but seriously, Liz, the Quinnipiac numbers, everybody's numbers, say essentially the same thing.
They do.
This is a walk away for Andrew Cuomo. This is a walk away, a little bit less, for Kirsten Gillibrand. And you know something? Do you realize that Senator Charles Schumer will be on the ballot this year? And is anybody even bothering?
I do realize that.
You know.
Well, we will be checking in with you again on this, of course, and hopefully there will be some new changes, and we will be able to report those. So thanks very much.
Okay, thanks for having
Mickey
me, Liz.
Carroll. I appreciate it.